What's going on, Secondhand Talent family? It's your boy Steiner here. As always, we've got our very special guest today, the wonderful Keith Harker. Keith,
Hello, everybody.
thank you so much for being on the show. Keith is a vocal coach for a very long time and also works with bands including Munyon, Mo, in the merch realm. You could find him on tour all around the country. I've been waiting to have him on the show for a while. Keith, thank you so much for being a part of the program.
Happy to be here, Steiner man. How you doing?
Doing good. So, we ask all of our guests the same question at the beginning of each interview. Had you never heard the term before? What does secondhand talent mean to you?
I think my impression always goes kind of immediately to the DIY scene for some reason. Just something that is much more of a passion project or somebody that is a casual professional, somebody that doesn't necessarily dig too deeply into it, but has a big love and passion for it as well. Um, I guess you could call it like the therapy hobby, the thing that you do because you know you love it
Ooh.
and because your spirit really needs it. I've done a lot of things that vary from DIY to very professional, and there's something to be said from the side of the spectrum that has a lot more heart and care in the limited investment that can be made in it. Whenever you build it yourself, it just makes you feel a whole lot better.
No, absolutely. I mean, building it so that, I mean, I would say that part of it, and then just that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that feeling of being a part of something that's bigger than you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but not feeling just like a cog in a machine.
Exactly. Yeah. Being a contributor is something I feel like everybody wants in every one of their jobs, and weirdly enough, the only place that I feel like I've ever really experienced that, at least in an unabashed degree, was the music industry. When you do something that people recognize, if it's not immediately verbally returned to you as like a thank you, it's something that will come back in due time as either another opportunity or a new network connection or something like that. So I definitely empathize with the nose to the grindstone mentality of things for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to create this platform for secondhand called Secondhand Talent is you and I both know very well, it takes a village to put on a show,
Oh yeah.
and it there are more than four people in a village. You
Yes.
will never drive through. You could even in Wyoming, the smallest village is not four people. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like there's so much that goes into it for that, you know, I don't want to call it thankless work, but it's work.
Yes.
And there really isn't, I don't want to say appreciation because I do think that there's an appreciation, like even but like more of an unconscious appreciation
Mm-hmm.
for like for the average concert or saying like, hey, I'm here, like this is so cool. But rarely does that appreciation translate to giving kudos to the stagehands, to the door
Right.
guys, to the
If you do
bouncers.
your job well, you're kind of just like more of the structure that people experience the show in more so than like a noticeable energy. And that's kind of weird where my merch world thing kind of deviates from my voice world a little bit, in the sense that part of my philosophy about merch is you are like the representative of the band. So the weird responsibility of a merch person is not
Hmm.
necessarily just to make the secondary income of the band, which is pretty much how tours float, by the way. So if you're ever on the fence about like buying that extra beer or buying that T-shirt, trust me, that T-shirt goes an awful lot
It
farther.
goes a
And
long, long, long way.
yes, very much so. Doubly so, weirdly enough, if the band is like, I don't want to say like mega established, but if they have like management or other things, that's more hands in the cookie jar. Like you were mentioning, it takes more than four people to run the show, and sometimes those more people that you see or never see rather are still needing to get paid. They're part of the machine. They're part of what keeps the magic rolling. And yeah, management can be viewed as evil in some capacities, but thankfully I've never had to experience anything like that personally. And it just comes down to the fact that, you know, what you're investing in needs to have a return. If
Yeah.
you invest in the beer at the end of the evening, well, I hope it was worth it, because potentially, depending on who you're seeing and how much merch they're used to selling, that $20 might be a meal for your favorite bass player in a small local band or something like that. It definitely goes into, you know, reestablishing the inventory and making sure that the machine keeps rolling. Um, that's kind of like the thing that, as even though I've been doing merch for probably close to a decade at this point, one of the observations that I tend to always make with the bands is how the funds that I bring up get allocated in the immediate. And sometimes that's everything from like emergency trailer repair to like, you know, we decided to have a routing change for whatever reason, and now we're just staying 2 extra days in the hotel. Being able to like fork that bill without crying or feeling like you're not gonna be able to eat or something
Or
like that.
taking it
Yeah.
from somewhere that'll cause pain by having less
Right.
resources.
Right. We're like somebody that falls on the sword of like, you know, supporting the whole band. And that does exist. And I mean, it is significantly more prevalent in the jam scene than I think people realize. Like, you know, I'm not going to use any specifics, but like there are bands that can tour all the way across the country, all the way out to me in Pittsburgh, and I can almost guarantee you that they basically need to find couches to sleep on and stuff like that, because $300 in hotel rooms is gonna ruin them. You
I
know, at
mean,
least.
or taking it down, another level. Talk about 10 years ago. When I remember when I was going around with the coop.
Hmm.
We're talking about showed up. It's like here, have like 2 beers and had some chicken wings.
Right,
And
that's
it's
your
like
payment. That's not even like the benefit. That's like.
it's like I need to be able to afford to get home. Like I can't even fly home on a chicken wing.
Right.
Like it's not even like
Right.
how about giving me what the food costs?
At
Like
least.
even that.
Right, because then you can at least like split off the $1.25 for a cup of ramen that'll at least keep you going, and bank the rest. And I get you too. Like there's so many weird little situations where there's like, food provided by the venue is never a bad thing, but sometimes they'll like, not saying that every venue will charge you for an arm and a leg for it, but sometimes they don't give you like a band or an employee discount. They just like give you the burgers that are $24 on their menu, and they take it out of a rider and stuff like
Right,
that.
and
So
it's in lieu of compensation, right?
exactly, it's
Yeah, and
cheaper for
that's
them to make a $5 burger and charge you $25 for it than it is for other things. And that's again like kind of why the merch goes a long way for bands like this, because like sometimes those situations are not really avoidable. Um, Sometimes you just haven't really eaten for 2 days, and that burger sounds like the most delicious thing on planet Earth, and you're like, whatever, okay. And then you end up owing the venue $15 because somebody had 2 beers at the end of the shift. Like it's one of those situations where like if you invest in your merch and you invest in somebody to sell it, and it is there as an available option. And my secret is honestly just having somebody behind that table when you're playing music. Like that's the end of it. If
yes.
that's like
I
a
mean, it's
random fan
essential.
that you can
It's
trust,
essential.
that's fine. But that's why you go through people like me who can verify and train them for you.
Right. I
But
mean, but
that's yeah.
it's a very real thing, though. I mean, like, I'm, more so a fan than, in that, but I was absolutely in the merch running capacity for a while, for the Coop and for Munyon,
Hmm.
back then. And even now, when it's tight and they don't have the full crew there, like, and they need someone to help with merch, I hop
Right,
back there. It's
right,
because it's all hands on deck, next man up.
and that's exactly why myself and my fiance Jill decided to create our merch agency, which is called Sling Merch. You can check it out at slingmerch.net too.
Links in the
Um,
description.
Boom. But the whole purpose of it is to give bands an option of a pool of people that have accountability, or have like, I don't want to say that experience is super important because, to be perfectly honest, the only thing that stood between the life that I was supposed to lead as of a decade ago and the life that I'm currently leading is the fact that I have just simply asked people. I've just been like, "Hey, can I help?" And that's like what my entire life is. Um,
If
the
you
cool
don't
part,
ask, you'll never get.
exactly right. And to be perfectly honest, that, it's not like it worked the first time, but I got like bits of information from people that were nice enough to give them to me, which is why I owe the Magic Beans so much. I've had so many conversations with every member of that band about just about everything that there is to know about the music industry. And if it wasn't for them and their faith in me and their trust and just the fact that they literally would call me anytime that they would cross the Ohio border to help them out, that gave me a lot of experience. That got me the opportunity to meet a lot of people and, just literally spend 8 years seeing where my help could be best served. And to be perfectly honest, it was, such a lovely time over that time period to just work and have fun and like be the guy that people called. But now I recognize the fact that I can't be 9 places at the same time. And,
Yeah.
sometimes bands have other fans that are just as capable as me. But, like, at the same time, those bands or those fans or both just want to have a little bit of insurance behind the person that's behind the table. Not only are you handling money, so, like, that freaking makes sense. Like, nobody wants to just have a quick and easy walk off of all of your money. But you want to have somebody that can represent your band. When you don't have anybody that's behind the table that can answer questions, or you're up playing your set and somebody comes walking up like, which is the best album that represents
Yes.
blank
Right.
and
Yes.
blank,
Excellent. Yep.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we really do encourage with the people that have been able to get through our interview process so far. And it's really just because we've been on the road too. This business is not supposed to have been started yet. It's supposed to have waited until 2024, but here we are. We're crushing it.
Well,
Um,
that's
mhm,
just, I mean, just, real quick. One of the big themes of the show that we've
mhm,
talked about, not in, I mean, in almost every episode, is within our industry, the importance of those people like yourself who are passing that knowledge down, and
right,
people like, Magic Beans, as you brought up, who pass that knowledge to you.
right,
And that, is so massively important. And I mean, you talk about, asking, and that kind of being how things go. I mean, I could say with Secondhand Talent, got to give a shout out to Tenacious Toys.
mm-hmm.
This little guy right here
Heck yeah,
decided to partner with us and
nice,
believe in us. And it only came through because I asked.
right,
And it's I, I want to actually bounce something off you. So it's
sure,
about asking, right?
yeah,
But it's also about, you know, we actions speak louder than words.
right,
It's about doing it and being able to do it consistently.
right, and that's what I think a lot of people kind of not only just kind of miss, because like when I say ask, there are people that will go out, within 5 minutes and just start like asking people things, but like you also have to know why you're asking. You have to know like what your
Mm,
objective is behind all of that, and that's something that the people that you ask information from, that's what they're looking for. They're looking
yes.
for like an air of legitimacy behind you. Do they care about your experience or like, you know your resume or anything like that? Not necessarily at
Are you
all.
trustworthy? Are you capable?
Right. Are
Yeah.
you like some wackadoo, or are you like somebody that is at least cognizantly well intentioned? Or can they tell that you are well meaning in what you're trying to do? And honestly, like heck, I accidentally even just stumbled into the whole jam scene, like just the fact that I teach a lot of voice and have taught voice now for close to 15 years, which is pretty wild to think about. Part of that validating process, like I was talking about before, just to tie it back into the thing right before the break, is like when you go up to ask somebody something, like it's good to have at least an idea of what you want out of it, and you have a
Yes.
confidence behind the reason why you're asking the question. Like if you just ask, like if you go up to a random band and you're just like, hey, can I help? They'll be like, no.
Right. You need intention. You need
Yeah,
like it's not. hey, can I do something for you? It's, hey, here's what I can do for you.
Right, exactly. You have to have something like on the table already. And the best part about merch is like it's generally the thing that everybody leaves by the wayside anyway.
Mm,
So like it's the easiest thing to get into. It's also the least credentialed. Like
mm.
if you can get a job anywhere, like from fast food to whatever, you can probably do merch. It's a little like serving tables in the sense that you can get in the weeds when there's like 50 people standing on the other side of the table and they're all like handing you shit and you're like trying to run security so people aren't walking away with your lighters and your koozies and you're trying to do all the things at once and turn around and grab t-shirts and all that stuff. So yeah, it can get a little stressful, but to be perfectly honest, it's one of those things where, you know, of all the things that can be considered a necessary evil, I feel like merch is almost the first thing that you should invest in. Like, if you're a band, you've probably run your own sound for a good minute. So, like, the last thing you need to do is to eat up a $450 sound guy, you know, expense per show that you can't comfortably reimburse all the time. Because we all know that if you go on a tour, that doesn't necessarily mean you're making $1,000 a show, and that's being pretty forgiving for a lot of folks that out
Yeah,
there
I was
still
gonna
today.
say like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a real variable right
right.
there.
That's if you're still at least paying everybody in your band like 50 bones at the end of the day at that point, but every crew member that you have on with you is definitely getting paid more than the band.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
one.
for the
I was
most
gonna say
part.
one of the reasons, or one of the people we had on earlier in the season was Matt Rennick from Sacred Hollow.
Okay.
And one of the
Met those guys
reasons,
not too long ago. They're
yeah,
great
I love
guys.
those guys. They're
Yeah.
awesome. I met them. They were opening for Kitchen Dwellers, at Chop Shop here in Chicago, and Matt, as soon as they were done playing, was behind the merch table,
Yep. I ran merch for
and
them in Buffalo on that same run, I want to say. And I've never seen a band have a representative come up to me while I'm working their table and just like, he stood next to me like two-thirds of the next set. Like
oh yeah,
that is the type of move that every band
that's the
needs to pull.
that's that dedicate that's why
Yep.
we had him on the show, because like
That's also why they're probably growing as fast as they are. You know, that representation goes a long way in being able to
that
build your own
drive
community.
too, that like
People
being
see
like
it.
that be that drive to, yes, the headliner is on, but I believe in my project and I care about my project enough to that I'm okay with not hearing the headliner, because I want to be the one
Right.
representing what you just heard.
Right. I'll shout out Ironworks in Buffalo because Ironworks is one of my favorite venues in the country.
Shout out
Um,
Ironworks.
they're great, especially because of where they have their merch. You can see every drop of everything. That was kind of what made me enjoy my time with Sicard Hollow. Is basically we all were just being, you know, silly fanboys to the Kitchen Dweller guys, and it was just super fun. You know, I'm really blessed in the sense that the Kitchen Dwellers are basically surrogate family at this point, as I've been working voice with them for the better part of 5+ years. I know their whole outfit. They're just great people. Shout out to past and present production crew guys too. Like I still talk to pretty much each and every one of you in some capacity.
And one
And it's
note
just
on the
great.
Kitchen Dwellers,
Mhm.
actually, I the only time in my life, so I went to I was at Sacred Rose for Sunday just to see Holly Bowling,
Mhm. Good
um
choice.
because she's one of my favorite musicians of all time, and a lot of people I know had been talking up Kitchen Dwellers a ton, and I had never heard any of their music. And I was chilling kind of like in the back area when they started, and I think 2 songs in, they started up Run for the Roses, and
Hmm.
I turned to Juz and I was like, "Excuse me, I need to go dance." And I ran to the front of the stage, and as soon as their set was over, I called my buddy Adam at Sugar Records and say, "Hey, have you ever heard of this band Kitchen Dwellers?" He goes, "No." "Do you have this album called Wise River?" He's like, "Yeah, I got 2 copies." I'm like, "Hold them for me." It's the
Heck
only
yeah.
time in my life that I saw a band and heard them for the first time and went and bought their record the next day.
Oh heck yeah, dude. That's an honor too, because when I started working with them, it was I'm trying to remember which album. Mermaid. Hmm. It was right after Ghost in a Bottle. I basically started working for them
So it would
like,
have been Mirror Maid, yeah.
yeah, it was. I started working with them like right after that was released. I think I sold some of their bottle merch pins or something like that. That's my only gauge of remembering, but it's been a minute for working with them. Um, but I was like we anytime that we work really really technically into a lot of different things regarding the voice stuff, and it's really great because I come from the world of barbershop harmony, so very
Mm,
visceral, very deep harmony that needs to be very precise. Bluegrass, weirdly enough, is effectively the same thing but with instruments,
yeah.
so it's
Oh,
kind
fat.
of,
Yes, absolutely. I
yeah,
never even put that together. But I having done barbershop myself, that is a
I didn't know
phenomenally
that too.
apt
That's super cool.
correlation right there.
Yeah, and it whenever you dig into it in that capacity, it allowed for a lot of the kitchen dwellers kind of, let's call them workshopping pieces at the time, to get an awful lot larger. Their biggest song that's come out in recent history, at least I wouldn't say recent history at this point, it's almost a year old, is that Stand at Ease song.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
you know, yeah, random anecdote about that, I get butterflies thinking about this story, but they gave me a phone call and put me on speakerphone when they were recording it, and Corey Wong recorded it for them. So like
oh,
I'm
cool.
sitting on speakerphone with Corey Wong, like just like listening to my ramblings in the background. Um, which kind of, yeah, once somebody tells you that, which was after the fact, obviously, I didn't really know it at the moment.
Right.
But yeah, thank God they didn't tell me before that, or I would have
Yeah, right.
probably said something real nerdy. But at the same time, uh, being able to kind of talk them through that big chorus part where they do the stomp clap kind of repetition
What
at the end.
can
Yeah,
stand? Yep.
we crashed all through that. It was brilliant. And I was working with Joe. This is probably one of my favorite random notes because it apparently made a big impression on Joe because he had a very, very specific way of explaining this. But that end of that bridge, it's a long phrase, and he's kind of high up in his range. And he could not, for the life of him, end the bridge and continue the next chorus. So all
Mm.
I told him to do was just like, try to make it all the way through into the chorus. Like he's got all this air in his lungs. What he's struggling to do is stop and then start again.
Yes.
But if you have enough air in your lungs, like whatever, just like send it. You can stop making sound and still keep the air moving and all that junk too. We can control our voices in 1,000 different ways, and I don't need to get into science right now. But once we had that conversation, that's why my favorite part of the song is the last chorus, because you can hear him hold over that note like it's a pure singular take recording,
Mm.
and he's just like holding that straight into the last chorus, and he comes in with this like twice energetic phrase than he was using up until that point, and it gives me shivers every time I think about it. And you know
That's a great anecdote. I really
yeah,
enjoy hearing
I,
that. And
I'm glad I got a chance to finally put that one out into the universe, because that one's been like a campfire stories
so
for
let's zoom
far
out
too long.
just a little bit because
Sure.
I normally we get into the history first, but just very curious, how did you get into the vocal space? Because I kind of fell into it accidentally, and I was more so doing stand
Hmm.
up and realized that I was able to make funny voices and like started doing impressions from like Simpsons, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Family Guy,
Those are mine.
Metalocalypse. Like this
Yep.
is my favorite, like my favorite still. One of the first impressions I learned is Meatwad. He's like, well, you said we was going to Jeffy's house. This ain't Jeffy's house. Jeffy, a damn hose.
Yeah, exactly right, dude. I got into voice. Well, I'll give you the TLDR stuff for like the first 20 years of my life, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of the
Sounds
last
good.
15. So I've always performed, and I don't really know why, other than the fact that like my mother always sang. She didn't, she plays the piano, but she doesn't play the piano like all day, every day, or anything like that. She played basically when I asked, as a kid growing up. Uh, but I was always in like church choir whenever I did church stuff, and then whenever I went to a very science-driven Catholic school, which weirdly enough kind of made me not a religious person before I graduated it, which was hilarious. Um,
Science-driven Catholic school.
yeah, it was I'm sure they've recognized the folly of their ways, because I've not heard uh of too many things regarding their science department since my graduation. But I will definitely say that my science teacher in like elementary and middle school kicked so much ass that it like completely opened my eyes to science and analysis, and just like thinking of things in a way that wasn't, not to say that any type of religion is one certain way, but I feel like science, putting personal belief to a side and looking at brass tacks and hard facts, is kind
Mm,
of, it's just a thing that appeals to me. It helps me be calm, thanks to the fact that logic and following things from A to B and B to C is what helps to keep my anxiety at bay. So
understanding what's
I,
subjective.
exactly. I just kind of like gravitated it in the first place. But with that being said, when I started singing and I started working in ensembles, which was like before I even went to high school, I started dabbling in like voice coaching, you could call it. But it was really just, I could monkey see, monkey do for the other kids an awful lot better than other folks. And in middle school, elementary school, like kids are smart enough. Like I don't know why we dumb things down as much as we do for certain kids, but like I guarantee you, if people were exposed to the science of what singing is, we would be able to hit the ground running a whole heck of a lot more. Like it took me until I was like 17 until I heard anything that I use in my everyday life
Sure.
for the science behind it.
Oh, I
Um,
fully, yeah,
yeah, and it's just, ridiculous to me, especially because like I did Pennsylvania music educator, like, fancy choir competitions and crap like that. And you'd be lucky if in one 5-minute ramble one of those special directors with a fancy PhD would even say anything not related to the music, but related to the production. I was very blessed in the sense that I had a voice teacher that would be considered a vocologist today, which is what I am, but it was before the term was even around.
mm.
He could not actually be one, but he always taught me with like an anatomy and physiology book on the piano at the same time. And anytime I'd make a weird sound, he would be like, all right, well, that happened here and it's because of this. And I effectively do the same thing, just with a little bit more detail than he was capable of doing back in the day. And then whenever I turned like 20, by the time I was 20, I was already certified in 2 different voice teaching techniques. I've been singing in the barbershop chorus in my city from whenever I was 14 until that point. I coached that chorus. They rank them like in college sports, so I started coaching them as a single A. By the time I was done coaching them, they were quad A.
Oh
And
wow,
that was like
that's
three.
wild.
That was 3 consecutive years. So every year that you win first place, you get bumped up to the next division. So we did that
So you
3,
won 3 consecutive years, basically.
more or less, like as far
That's
as like
wild.
our little like district is concerned. And what that ended up kind of creating for us, or rather we scored well enough to be bumped up or something like that, I don't know. But I kind of got away from it because not only at the time was barbershop still divided by the genders, it was not very inclusive. It was very like old world, old fashioned, and just like not very positive. Like I don't know, there's something to be said with like the off colored humor of, you know AARP card holding individuals and stuff like that in choirs. Like sometimes that stuff can wear on you. It's like the awkward uncle that always makes like some wacky ass comment at every holiday that just like
The
makes you
joke
want to,
that's really not a joke.
yeah, the joke that makes you go play video games for the next 6 hours in a room with your lights off. Like it's stuff like that. And so I took a step away from it, and that's whenever like, and I taught within the society for 4 years at their second biggest conference out of the year, and that's actually how I got my start teaching privately, was within the society, and like once a year for like a 2 week long thing. And eventually it just kind of clicked that I could do it professionally. And at around like my second or third year of doing this with local performers and people focused on musical theater, I just wanted a break. So that's when somebody told me to go to a jam show, because they're like, oh, it's just instrumentalists, like blah, blah, blah. Nah, like the first show I went to, there was some dude trying to sing. So I'm like hanging out in the back of the room, like, I can definitely help. So I like went to 2 more shows, and kind of started to understand what the jam scene was about. And that's when I noticed as well, thanks to, I can't remember who it was, but I definitely walked up to someone who's like, "Hi, I'm a voice teacher," and they immediately took offense to that. And I was
Yeah,
like,
right.
yeah,
So, you know, it's funny you say that because, you know, when I think about enduring bands that have multiple vocalists, right?
mm,
So, one of the cool parts um, about Fish, for me anyway, is that Trey wrote songs for Page to sing
mm,
and for Mike to sing. And having that ability to, you know, that you know, the term the egoless, right? You know, to
right,
take the ego out of it, to be like, I'm writing this beautiful song that I'm writing for someone else to sing because I know they can bring something to this
that I
that
can,
I can't,
right,
is not really something that the casual fan or observer would understand the importance of. And to your point about, you know, when you say you're a vocal coach and it's like kind of like meh, you know,
right.
because I mean, if it were me, like, I think I would probably think of like, what do I need to do better? I'm fine.
Right, exactly, because that's where like perspective comes into a big thing. That's also why I'm so glad that I can now use the term vocologist, and people actually are like, all right, I kind of, they're starting to know what that is. It's been around long enough that, like, you know, a Google search might make it pop up every now and again when you're looking up like voice things. Um, and weirdly enough, you know, just to circle back on Trey real fast, uh, my most recent voice pedagogy technique was by one of his former voice teachers. Like, no joke, like
Oh, wow.
yeah, I got certified in it, and then I got home from that and like logged onto Facebook like 2 weeks later, and she has a picture with a backstage pass hanging out with Trey, and I'm like, now if only you told me that when I was there, we would have been able to have, you know, conversations about the scenes that we're
You know
in.
what's wild is that
Mhm.
actually 2 weeks from now, from the air date of this episode, we have an interview with Ellis Goddard of the Mockingbird Foundation.
Oh, nice.
So we'll be up on fish.net, and that was a kind offer from him,
That's super cool.
and
Congrats on that.
it's not, you know, it but it's that similar type of thing of like, okay, I see what you're doing. I see you're trying to like build something up, and that you're not asking for it. You don't have that expectation of like, I'm
Right.
only doing this so I can be, you know, put here or listed there, all that. Like,
Right. Yeah, and
yeah,
it's really weird too, because the music industry seems to be one of the only places where that is something that you can truly measure as a benefit. Because like when that exists in like your 9 to 5 job scenario, like that end result is like a fucking pizza party or like a, you know, a borderline promotion, which is really just 50 more cents an hour and twice the responsibility than you had before. And it's really interesting. But whenever you have these interactions in the music scene, it's relatively legitimate for the most part. Like I've never experienced anybody really taking anything from me. If anything, it's like, I see what you're doing. Let's make our paths run parallel for a moment or two and see if that can help either one of us gain momentum.
the
And
rising
if,
tide lifts all ships.
yeah, and if that ends up working, then heck yeah. I mean, like, you know, I am indebted to many of my friends in the music scene, and I'm also very honored to be able to call them friends because of just the amount of goodness that we've been able to provide for each other. And even if that's not something that you can quantify in like numerical or financial benefit, it's something that would otherwise have made the machine stop. Like I know I keep saying
Yes.
talking about the machine, but like I cannot emphasize to any fan out there as much as, you know, to literally everybody. Like the music industry is a hope and a dream. The fact that money even exists in it is a technicality. And if any of that stops, hiccups, has anything problematic go on, the machine stops. It is not like, you know, a little frantic sad person post on Facebook is not going to be able to save it, you know, unless you like can drop $10,000 to hire the band your damn self and somehow
Yeah.
transport a broken ass van halfway across the state sometimes. Like that
Right,
shit just
right.
happens. Um, and that's kind of why, you know, I joke that both of my responsibilities or my professions are related, but like that's kind of the same headspace that I have with doing voice work as I do with doing merch stuff. Like the voice work is not for me to get, you know, my to pay my bills and stuff like that. Sure, I use that money to primarily to pay my bills, but at the same time, it's because like I know the absolute shitstorm that will happen to the 12 people that work in your band if you don't sing, play, bring in the crowds, do whatever. Like it's all part of, again, the machine. And
Right.
if you
We're,
aren't
as we say, the village, right? Like cogs in the
right,
machine, villagers in the village. I mean, potato,
yeah, man.
potato there. Exactly.
Exactly. And that's why, you know, just to circle back around on the emphasis of merch is just like that's the only thing that you can guarantee bringing you more money. As much as I would love to say, and, you know, most of my friends are fantastic production people, and I don't want to invalidate what they do because they do amazing work and create the experiences that you know people talk about. You know, when the light show's banging, you talk about it. When the sound is banging, you talk about it, and all that stuff is absolutely beneficial and certainly useful. But it's the sad bottom line aspect of it is that doesn't necessarily bring in more money. Will it help you sell tickets down the road? Yes, because it helps to build your reputation. But in the grand scheme of things, like if paying $1,000 to $1,200 to a sound guy and a light guy a day is going to destroy the machine, then you need to look into ways to create a better bottom line so that you have the flexibility for that.